Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting of the Wallingford Planning and Zoning Commission to order. This is our Monday, August 9th, 2021 meeting. If we'd all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. And obviously, I was reading off the wrong sheet of paper. It was 1 month behind. This is our September 13th, 2021 meeting. And at this point in time, I'd like to introduce the members of the commission and staff that are here this evening. To my far right is Jamie Hine, who's an alternate. Next to Jamie is commission member Jeff Cohen. To my immediate right is James Fitzsimmons, who's a commission member. To my immediate left is J.P. Vanoy, our vice chairperson of the commission, and next to JP is Steve Allenson, who is an alternate on the commission. At the table to my left is Cheryl Ann Tubby, who is our recording secretary. Next to her is Kevin Pagini, our town planner, and sitting in the front row is Amy Torrey. She's our zoning enforcement officer. And I'm Jim Seichter. I'm the chairperson of the commission. And our first order of business now would be the consideration of the minutes of our August 9th, 2021 meeting. Is there any commission member? I'll note that there was only 4 commission members at that meeting, which would be Mr. Cohen, Mr. Hine, Mr. Allenson, and myself. So if any one of those gentlemen would like to make a motion on the minutes or make any corrections, I'd entertain that. Mr. Cohen.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make one correction on those minutes.
Sure.
They have me listed as secretary, which I am not. So I'd make a motion to approve these minutes for the August 9th meeting with that one correction.
And also, I just noticed, I'd also like to make a second correction. It mentioned that Mr. Talbot was also in attendance, and I don't believe Mr. Talbot was at the meeting. So if we could make those 2 corrections. So we have a motion for the minutes with those corrections. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second with Mr. Hine. Voting with Mr. Hine.
Yes to approve.
Mr. Cohen.
Yes.
And Mr. Allenson.
Yes.
And I vote yes. The minutes are approved. Before we go to our first item of business, I'd like to announce there are 2 items that are not going to be heard this evening. The first one is a special permit revision Hall Avenue LLC 238 Hall Avenue. That's deferred to our next meeting in October. And then the next one also is, it's new business, item number 5, which is a site plan service area expansion 1174 North Colony Road LLC, 1174 North Colony Road. And again, that application will not be heard this evening. Which brings us to our first order of business. It's special permit warehousing Montana Construction 5 Research Parkway. I think, as everyone knows, the public hearing has been closed on this application. So the commission will begin discussing the application. But before we begin discussing, I'd like to make a correction to a comment that I made at the August meeting. During that meeting, I indicated that I had contacted the applicant to give the applicant the option of deferring action on the application from our August meeting to our September meeting because there was only 4 commission members that were familiar with the application to vote on that application. That was a misstatement on my part. I did not contact the applicant. I had asked Mr. Pagini, our town planner, to contact the applicant to give the applicant that option. So I just want to make it very clear for the record that except for during the public hearing, I have had absolutely no contact with the applicant nor with the applicant's representative. So I just want the record to be clear on that. So before I begin discussion for any commission members who would like to make comments, discuss the application, I will indicate that Mr. Matarazzo has, a commission member, has resigned from the commission. And I'm going to ask Mr. Allenson to take that seat, if you would. Mr. Allenson, it's my understanding, is on the agenda for the town council for next, I think for tomorrow evening, to be appointed, or at least action to consider his appointment to the Planning and Zoning Commission as a member of the commission. So with that, then again, Mr. Allenson would be sitting on the application. So with, after saying that, I guess I would open it up for discussion or comments from any commission members on the application. And again, when I say any commission members, it would only be the 5 commission members voting on the application, which would be Mr. Cohen, Mr. Fitzsimmons, Mr. Vanoit, and Mr. Allenson, as well as myself. Any commission members that would like to make a comment on the application? Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a lot of comments, and I hope with my allergies I can get through this in a reasonable manner. So tonight we're voting on this, and this really came down to, you know, 2 items for me, and that was the traffic concerns and, you know, the appropriateness of the application based on the special permit and the proximity to the residential area. You know, the commission spent dozens of hours, you know, at the meeting, going through our documentation, and I'm sure the other commissioners spent as much time as I did over the last couple of months just reviewing the material and going through it and going through the regulations and just double checking things. With that being said, and again, I've attended in person or via Zoom all the meetings, so you know I'm pretty familiar with everything that's transpired. You know, at times, and I'll get into the specifics now. You know, at times I found that you know, some of the documentation that we as commissioners have to get, you know, hasn't been received in a timely manner from the applicant, from, you know, some of the departments, or sometimes our traffic peer reviewer, which had made things difficult. During our last meeting, we got comments from the applicant as far as traffic based on, I guess, lateness from the peer reviewer getting that information to the applicant. And then while we were discussing that information the day of the meeting, we actually had the peer reviewer reviewing those comments that were made by the applicant at the meeting. So he was doing that in real time as we were going through the meeting. And, you know, I think part of the issue there was, you know, the applicant requested that, you know, we start the public hearing without actually having any, you know, presentations given. And so that really lost us, you know, a whole meeting with getting that information out to us and the public. As I mentioned, for me, you know, the key to this application being the special permit is the traffic and the appropriateness of the surrounding areas. You know, I really have a very long list of comments, and basically all of my comments are in the documentation. All my notes are taken from the meeting minutes, and I'm going to highlight a couple of specific documents that I relied on heavily. A lot of my comments were extremely well documented in the July meeting minutes, and I commend our recording secretary for doing a great job. They were really, really thorough, and that really serves. And again, the recording itself serves as the record of the meeting. So, several key documents that I reference are the June 22nd and July 12th traffic peer review comments, the July 12th planning and zoning meeting minutes, which I just mentioned, the July 1st Department of Engineering memo, a memo called the response criteria for evaluating special permit, and that was from the applicant. June 9th memo from Jeffrey Dewey to our town planner. June 11th memo, our peer review response to comments from Mr. Van Zandt, the traffic peer reviewer. So my first concern is the traffic. And, when this application first came up, the first indication of traffic concerns to me came from basically day one when the applicant requested to use Carpenter Lane. And basically, and this is a quote, in Amazon's words, they said they wanted to use Carpenter Lane to allow for ease in finding parking for their associates. And to me, that really set the tone that parking, they knew it at the time, is going to be an issue. Then we received the traffic report. In my professional career, I've had to review a lot of reports. I was an IT executive, and I had to review a lot of reports that my folks produced, and I had to assign people to produce a lot of reports. Well, I found the initial traffic report from the applicant lacking. It was filled with errors that our peer reviewer corrected, and it had significant omissions. One of the significant omissions, and there are many, and I did not bother to list everything, but one of the key omissions was the fact that we had 3 other developments going in the area, and they did not recognize, they did not add that into their report. Based on the errors in the report, these omissions, I could not really rely on the credibility of the entire traffic report. If some of these easy things were mistakes, what else in there could be in error? It was a very long report, no doubts there, but still, I would have expected a much better report than we received. One of the issues with omitting the other buildings going up in the area, we had an application last month that they had minimal trips from their warehouse, but they had to add that into the existing Amazon counts, and basically those traffic counts for Amazon put this other business owner at risk of not having his application approved because it was going to cause some of the traffic problems, which I'll get into in a little bit. One of the questions that I consistently asked the applicant, which I really did not. They answered it, but it was at the last minute. I had consistently asked, based on their traffic report, how many more trips would cause some of these intersections to fail. You know, they had some analytical software, I think it was called Synchrony, that, you know, takes all this input and, you know, should give you an indication of where the failure would be. You know, who knows, that new warehouse could have caused, you know, some of these intersections again, which I'll reference, to fail. They did not answer that until really the very end, where they said, well, Mr. Cohen, there's too many factors to input into, you know, the software to come up with an answer. Too many factors to figure out, you know, a major traffic concern with, you know, analytical software that is supposed to do this. And I think that could have been done. And, you know, I don't think that Amazon should have a monopoly on the traffic in this area where it could possibly prevent other businesses from being built. And actually some of the residents picked up on this issue as well in some of the public correspondence. Another significant omission, which I think is key to this, was the fact that there was no discussion, no mention whatsoever of, you know, school bus traffic. And, you know, the school bus farm is right around the corner from, you know, where this is being built. So this absolutely should have been taken into consideration. You know, I think it's critical that the impact on the school bus traffic and keeping kids on the bus is a critical piece of information that we don't have. And one of the residents brought this up as well, where, and I didn't know this, if kids are on the bus for more than an hour, there has to be some special dispensation or something. And it sounds like this potentially is an issue, but it was not brought up in the report at all. And, you know, again, this I think speaks to the appropriateness of the location and the use of, you know, this parcel. You know, the safety and the well-being of our kids are really the overriding concern as far as, you know, this traffic generation. So I think that was a lacking piece of info that we should have addressed. Again, I want to point out a lot of this, in all of it, is on the record. And specifically, if you look at the, again, July meeting minutes or review the television recording, you can see all the commentary we had with the back and forth on traffic concerns. And I think those issues that were especially highlighted in the minutes, you know, are key to us making a decision, because there were a lot of great questions asked by, you know, my fellow commissioners on traffic impacts. So I'm not going to, again, repeat all that, but I do have a few specific key things that I think are important that I want to mention. You know, I thought our peer reviewer did a pretty good job. We did try and put him on the spot to say yea or nay, is this good or bad? But I don't think that was his decision really to make. I think he did a good job in pointing out where the pain points are and the concerns that he has and that we should have as a commission in looking at whether or not, we approve this. So a couple of things he pointed out were some of the, intersections on 68, 91 off-ramp, northbound, on-ramp, northbound, southbound off-ramp, and the northbound off-ramp. He felt, as well as our Department of Engineering, that the specific intersection on 68 where we're turning from the off-ramp, the northbound off-ramp on 68, taking the right-hand turns to get onto Research Parkway is a major, major concern. And we got into the discussion on how that traffic is going to be handled. Basically, both Mr. Van Zanten and Department of Engineering were concerned about having that little intersection function properly, and they both said that it was potential for a lot of accidents. The driver expectations on making those turns, is not normal. And those two entities, express the same concern, and I have the same concern as well. Right now, when I go east on 68 in the morning, you have the two lanes that turn left before 9:30. Well, you know what? People go that middle lane and they go straight in the morning where they should be in the right-hand lane. And that happens consistently when I drive through there, and I drive through quite a bit. So I can just imagine having the other signage on the off-ramp with the specifics on when you can turn, what lanes to turn, is going to be just a nightmare. And part of the other discussion on that was, this is something that the OTSA Traffic Commission has to deal with. And basically some of the comments by Mr. Van Zanten indicated that, they may or may not approve, some of the suggested signage, methodology on how to make that turn work. Part of the Amazon response to this was, to add additional signage, and they promised to work with OTSA to come up with a plan. And, quite honestly, this is something that I feel should be done prior to, this application being approved. A couple other comments with Mr. Van Zanten. He specifically stated some of these off-ramps are actually at fail stage now. The I-91 southbound off-ramp is at maximum capacity at this point. And, with this design, this technically will fail. And his quote was, "The town needs to know there will be additional delays." And, based on the commentary from peer reviewer, I do have concerns about both sides of 91 backing up during peak hours. OSA plays a big part in this whole thing as far as traffic, but, we are unsure of how they're going to react or respond. The peer reviewer had concerns about, their involvement and how they're going to provide, responsible solutions. So, I touched on it. There were concerns about the lane changes, concerned about on the 91 exits. There's concern about the light timings, whether or not they can be adjusted. And as an example, I was coming home the other day, and it was, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was Sunday. But there was one Amazon Prime truck which was taking a left turn onto Research. And, I'm coming westbound on 68, so my traffic light turned red, so I had to stop. So I watched the Amazon Prime truck make his left-hand turn. He only got halfway over 68 before our lane turned green. And I'm thinking, how can this be? Now, I'm not sure if those timings changed during, the peak hours, but when I was there, you had that one truck who could only do, half of his turn onto Research. So to me, I said, this is a concern. So there were a number of potential light timings that were suggested to change. The applicant suggested increasing the speed limit on Research Parkway to 45 miles per hour, which, the peer reviewer had concerns about that. And OTSA doesn't focus on peak exceptional timings, meaning they take the daily average and they don't work on holidays, special events. But the problem here is that Amazon has, and again, this is all in the record, they've indicated that the holiday season lasts for 3 months as peak traffic. OTSA is not going to look at that. Amazon also has special sales days, and the one we talked about was Amazon Prime. But you know what? I got an ad the other day for Amazon sale for Labor Day. I'm thinking, oh, okay, there's a few other sales days that I was unaware of. So do they have a July 4th sales day? Do they have a Memorial Day sales day, which is going to impact the traffic during those times? And I assume that this would be several days impact to the delivery station. I got a couple more pages. I'm just going to see if I can skip some of this. Okay. In the traffic report, there were a number of other issues identified, again, by the peer reviewer, and I know I questioned many of the line items in the traffic report where, the peer reviewer indicated there was a potential issue, but the response from, BL was that, yes, we recognize that. There was no mitigation offered, and it turns out that OTSA does require some type of reasoning when there's no mitigation for these numerous problems that were pointed out. And there were a number of them. I won't go through them all, but again, they're very well documented in the July meeting minutes. So that is another concern. Just too many problems that, yeah, we recognize it, but we don't have a solution at this point. So for me, the traffic conclusion, it's problematic. I don't want to be contributing to, unworkable situations that have potential accidents that can occur. For me, people's property and safe being is key to this. And, if, we can't prevent this with real situations staring us in the face, then quite honestly, I have a problem with it. So just a little bit more, hopefully I'm not boring everybody to tears here, but I did spend a lot of time, like I said, looking at this, and I think it's important that I point out my concerns. So I want to turn comments over to, the appropriateness of, this application being a special permit. And I want to, state, and this is one of the documents, item H, where on page 6 of the applicant's presentation, where it's the preservation of character of the neighborhood, page 6, and existence of other uses. The traffic plan is designed, they state in there that the traffic plan is protective of the neighborhood. So basically, from the meeting minutes, again, it's all documented, the question was asked about the delivery stations where Ms. Schumer's response stated that these delivery facilities did not exist 10 years ago. Okay? So basically, again, they're stating the traffic plan is protective of the neighborhood. And they state, again, this is a quote, Research Parkway was planned for commercial and industrial traffic, and it creates a direct route to 68 and 91. That is true. However, Research Parkway was designed more than 10 years ago. Research Parkway was not designed to allow a delivery station in that area. Talk about like businesses. Yeah, the applicant mentions the U.S. Post Office. There's another delivery center on Research. This Amazon delivery center will dwarf the traffic from these other two companies. So it really, again, does not preserve the character of the surrounding neighborhood. And again, we're talking specifically here about businesses, the neighborhood of businesses. So continuing with the appropriateness of the area, unfortunately, this development does coexist with a fairly substantial residential area. And based on, again, the traffic and, you know, the statement about Research Parkway and making it accessible to 68 and 91, and my feeling that it was not designed for this because it was built more than 10 years ago, before the delivery stations existed. You know, I think we on the commission do have a responsibility to, you know, look at the impacts on the residential folks as well. You know, unfortunately, it's a tough situation with, you know, the residents being so close to this area. But we do have a responsibility to look after their rights as well. And, you know, I think this special permit gives us the latitude to take their concerns into account. So I got a few more things, and I'll wrap it up. So those are basically my concerns about traffic and the appropriateness of the development. So hopefully I have my papers in place, because I would like to address one letter from the public. And if you just hang on a second, I do have it here. So this is a letter that was submitted to us. Well, it was received on June 10th, 2021, addressed to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and it's from, and I'm sorry if you're here and I pronounce your name wrong, I apologize, but it's Adelaide Kofer, 35 Whiffletree Road. She wrote a very nice letter, and she brings up a extremely valuable, reasonable comment. And her letter is part of the public record, but I don't think it has been given the attention it deserves. So I would like to just read the one paragraph that I think is key, because this does have somewhat of a bearing on this application. On Mayor Dickinson's request, the commission withdrew our own application for proposed amendment of zoning regulations referring to the I-5 and IX and Watershed Protection District overlay. After the commission had deliberately worked out this amendment and received approval from the regional water authorities, agencies, the mayor's veto came rather unexpectedly. And then she lists three concerns. Would the changes in this proposed amendment have been compliant with the MS4 plan? Has the mayor explained his serious legal and policy concerns yet? Is there a time plan where he will do so? Example given, a workshop is suggested by one of my colleagues. And will this be in time before the commission decides on this application? And the last thing she mentions is, if the proposed amendment had been passed as planned, would the project at 5 Research Parkway be permissible under that new withdrawn/postponed regulations? I don't know the answer to that, and I don't believe we can, you know, base our decision on this tonight. But it's a very astute comment, and I give her credit for expressing that concern, because, you know, that is a concern that I had as well. But again, I don't know if we can, you know, deal with that tonight as part of this application, but I did want to bring that up. So basically, those are my comments. I appreciate, you know, you letting me speak. Again, I think traffic and the appropriateness of the application are things that require, you know, our well thought out thoughts on this application. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Other commission members, I believe Mr. Allenson, you wanted to comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say a couple of things, Mr. Chairman. The first is, this is a huge application, and as Mr. Cohen has mentioned, there's a ton of documents and data and information which I have reviewed, the entire record, been at all of the meetings, and it's been a lot. The applicant has provided a lot of data and a lot of information, and I really commend them for getting that to us. I also wanted to commend our town employees, especially Mr. Pagini, for doing a great job in getting everything organized and available for us. So I did want to echo Mr. Cohen's concerns about the traffic. Between the peer reviewers' comments and the traffic studies, I have serious concerns about the impact to the area. It's in the record, and I just don't know that, based on the experts' opinions, that even if all of the OSTA changes were made, that the roads could handle safely the amount of traffic. So I have those concerns. Also, we received several comments from Allison Kapuscinski in the record, our town engineer. Some of those concerns were addressed by the applicant. Most of them were, but there were a couple that were not. I'm just concerned that if there are concerns raised by our town engineer that don't get addressed, I don't have any other answers. So those are my two major concerns, really the traffic and some unanswered questions from our town employees. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Allenson. Mr. Fitzsimmons, you have some comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I definitely did as much homework as Mr. Cohen, and I think your comments were well thought out, and I will try to be brief in my comments. I've been on the Planning and Zoning Commission a number of years, and I have learned whenever there's people in the audience, you know, whether it's, it certainly generates a lot of interest and a lot of input. And I, you know, something I say to my sons all the time, change is hard. You know, I can remember when people were in the audience when the Gerke farm was going residential. I can remember when people were in the audience when the Self farm was going residential. You know, people didn't want change, and obviously both those farms are gone and they're now residential developments. This is a permitted use in this zone. And I think, you know, based upon the comments from April, someone had said at the time, this is about balance, you know, balancing the right of the landowner and the right of their neighbor. The only reason that this particular application is before the commission and has taken so much time and input is because of the traffic. And I think I'm definitely on the record with with numerous comments regarding the amount of traffic and the applicant's plan to address the traffic. I think for this application, the applicant has addressed my concerns related to traffic, and I speak specifically to the Carpenter Lane access, which I thought had the most impact to the residential neighborhood. This is compatible with the zone, but it's only compatible with the zone on properties facing this particular use. It is not compatible with the residential zones located behind this use. And that is something that we have wrestled with over the years, whether it be the Oakdale Theater or Thurston Foods or other applicants where they are close to or directly abut residential uses. And that is always a challenge for the commission, but, or anybody in town. But I think this, as I said, on the record, this use is permitted according to our regulations. Here in Wallingford, this commission and the gentleman I serve with, we have to wear two hats. In Wallingford, we have a planning commission, we have planning and zoning commission. In other towns, they have a separate planning commission and a separate zoning commission. So not only do we make the rules, but then we have to act on the rules that we've set in place. Based upon the information that the applicant had and the potential use of the building, they were looking at our zoning book saying, here's what's permitted. And everything that they've asked for is permitted as long as they address our concerns. We have spent lots of hours, both this citizen commission and the town staff, reviewing the application and as far as I'm concerned, improving it. And I talk specifically again about Carpenter Lane because I felt from the last application that was the biggest concern based upon what I had heard from the neighbors was the potential for vehicle traffic and truck traffic impacting the residential neighbors, including school buses and things along those lines. I do think at the very first meeting or the second meeting when the applicant came in and said we're going to close Carpenter Lane except for emergency vehicle, to me that was a very positive move for the applicant, meaning they understood, they listened, and certainly they know where we're coming from. I would share the concerns of my the two prior speakers regarding Interstate 91 northbound. I think the Interstate 91 northbound exit is outside the purview of this commission, and in the event that the vote is to move in favor, I would strongly recommend that this commission and the town be fully engaged with the state on any changes, whether it be restriping or retiming of lights, and not just throw our hands up and say, well, you do what you got to do. I think if there's any changes that the state requires, this town should be included and notified. As you know, this is the third potential use by this company in this town. And the second application down, I would say across from the dump because I'm old, Cherry Street, we did have a referral to the state, which I know our engineering and planning department is following up on, and I don't think that should happen again. I do think that if approved, I think any condition or certificate of occupancy should be tied to completion and the town's acceptance of any state-required changes. The other piece I had that I wanted to mention is the traffic study and the letter grading system. I apologize. I know when Mr. Cohen was going through his comments, I was looking for something here from comments back in April. And I think the problem I've had, and I've said this before, and I think it was the memo we received April 22nd from B&L companies, has to do with the peer review, their response to the traffic peer review comments. The concern is, and I can't fix this and no one in this room can fix this, is traffic studies look at AM and PM. They do not look at our society today, which is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week society. Back in the days before Bristol-Myers, there was factories, and you had Pratt & Whitney in North Haven, where the traffic was tied to the shift change. Then you had Bristol-Myers come in, which is a nice white-collar company, and theirs was a 9-to-5 type operation. This operation is not like that. but most of our recent additions to town are not like this. They are not a traditional factory or a traditional office. People are working 2-3 shifts, and the trucking operations we have on North Plains Highway are working 24/7. This proposed would be a 24/7. So the traffic study manual, or the Bible, as the traffic engineers sometimes refer to it, have not addressed or created a 24-hour trucking terminal usage that we can apply to. So the only thing that we, the town, and the applicant and our very dedicated peer review person was able to refer to was the AM and PM trips. Make no mistake, I wish Bristol-Myers never left Wallingford. I wish Bristol-Myers was still in town. I wish Bristol-Myers was not acquired by a company in Switzerland and didn't close the Wallingford office. I can't bring it back, and unfortunately no one else can. But at the same time, for someone who doesn't like change, myself, I do think that this particular applicant is proposing a use that is not what the maximum that our zoning allows. When it was zoned by this commission or the people who sat here before us to create an IX zone, this is the type of use envisioned. And if it wasn't for the vehicle trips, this would never have been a special permit. It never would have even had to come for a public hearing. It would have been a use by right, is the terminology they use in zoning. So with that, I think this applicant has improved on the last application on this site. I think based upon the totality of the evidence presented, and there was an awful lot, I do think that this applicant has addressed my concerns as it pertains to appropriateness of use for the issuance of a special permit. And I do think and acknowledge the fact that anytime we have an industrial use near or abutting a residential use, we're going to have conflict. And I think we have spent a lot of hours, and the applicant has proposed conditions that would address the issues that have been raised. And my primary issue of traffic and my primary issue of traffic on Carpenter Lane was addressed very early on in the application. And my hope would be that if it is approved, that we make sure we continue to work with the state on any changes to the I-91 North exit ramp. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzsimmons. And Mr. Benoit, you have no question? I'll just make a few comments, just to address one of the comments that initially Mr. Cohen made, just concerning the letter that he referenced from a member of the public in referencing the mayor's request that our zoning regulations that we're considering changing for the IX and I-5 zone. The meeting that we were going to have for that application, that occurred subsequent to the receipt of this application. So this application was filed before those regulations would have been considered. So the withdrawing of those regulations by the commission had no impact on this application, because again, this application was filed prior to that, and therefore this application would need to be reviewed under the regulations that were in place at that time. So just to make that point clear. As far as my comments, I think we've certainly heard from 3 of the commission members. I think everybody has certainly voiced their concerns, their feelings. I, like everyone, spent a significant amount of time reviewing the application, all the information that was presented, and I would agree with Mr. Fitzsimmons as far as the concerns I had, as far as the appropriateness of the use. I think that has been addressed. I think we're all concerned and had issues about the traffic, and certainly when the one that would be probably the most concerned, the area would be mentioned by several commission members, northbound exit off of 91 as you're turning right. You know, right now, that exit in at least in a PM and a no-build stage would be at a level E. The improvements that they're proposing would bring that to a level D, so that would be an improvement in that particular intersection. You know, like Mr. Fitzsimmons, if this application were to be approved, I would look for any approval to be subject to the improvements that are stated by the applicant and would be approved by the state. If the state did not prove what was being presented, then at this point in time, I wouldn't see that the application should be approved. And those, again, if the application is approved, I would look to have, before a certificate of occupancy could be issued, that in fact those improvements put in place. As Mr. Fitzsimmons mentioned, on the prior Amazon application, I believe the state is still looking at those particular improvements, which certainly is a situation that should not have developed. A couple other issues, though, that I look at when the applicant was talking about their prime days, and there was discussion, and the applicant agreed to limit. There's 350 parking spaces for vans. They were going to restrict the use of those parking spaces during their peak season as well as their prime days. What they had suggested, or what they were looking for, was to have their prime season being November 1st through, I believe it was February 1st. At least in my mind, they didn't give me a good answer as far as why that length of time for that. So in my mind, I would be looking for more of a November 15th through the January 15th, and the same thing with their Amazon Prime Day in the summer, as far as they were looking for 35 days, and I believe our town planner had suggested 15 days. So that's something that certainly I would look at to restrict that. And you know, additionally, there was another issue, and quite frankly, we got conflicting information from the applicant on this. There was, on their site plan, there was 120 additional spaces that they showed for associate parking. You know, initially there was on the left side of the Amazon building that they're proposing, there's like 252 spaces for associate parking. Then there was additional 120 on the opposite side. On their plans, and we've received several revisions, they've always identified those as associate spaces. At the last meeting, when I questioned the applicant on that, all of a sudden the change was, well, it's not for associates, it's for our drivers. And that certainly conflicted with the information they provided. What I would like to see, again, if the application's been approved, that we treat those 120 spaces much like we're treating the 350 spaces, that those spaces can only be used during their peak season as well as on their prime day. By cutting those spaces out, it gives them certainly more than enough spaces, about 535 spaces for their vans during their non-peak season. So again, our information that we certainly received from our Water and Sewer Division, you know, they were concerned about, you know, droppings of fluids, snow removal products being, you know, on some of these spaces, and by restricting the use of those 350 spaces as well as another 120 spaces in that parking lot, I think that goes in a way to address some of the concerns that the Water Division had indicated. So those are generally my comments. Again, I go back to the commission if there's any further comments that anyone would like to make. Yes, Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, you know, as far as in a perfect world, quite honestly, this suggestion that all proposed improvements receive approval from OTSA prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. In a perfect world, that sounds fine, but this is not a perfect world. And this suggestion as a condition of approval is, in my humble opinion, unworkable. The proposed improvements may or may not be the improvements that the applicant actually finalizes or OTSA will agree to. You know, basically we're saying, yeah, we're going to let that intersection off, 91 North onto 68 be, somehow worked out magically. And I have a significant concern that, we're just asking, we're creating a problem situation if we, make this a condition of approval, because we don't know what's going to happen, And, my fellow commissioners stated that, the Cherry Street application, well, guess what? How long has that been in business? And OTSA hasn't come back with, a remedy for that. In my comments earlier, there were numerous, and I can dig up the document and go through it line by line, where our peer reviewer has stated this is an issue. Again, BL has acknowledged, yes, it is. They have not offered any mitigation. They haven't offered any improvement to numerous issues relating to traffic. I find this condition of approval. So, if the, commission approves this and we move forward, they put a shovel in the ground, they build the building, but yet they could wait years to occupy it.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Mr. Cohen.
No, please.
Okay, please, go ahead.
No, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, what you're looking at is suggesting condition of approval. That doesn't mean that those would be, and I can't speak for any member that's going to make a motion, but those are simply a proposal. The commission can make whatever changes they like. The commission can make a condition that the certificate of occupancy cannot be issued until the improvements are completed. That is something that we can make as a condition of approval. The commission can make as a condition of approval that our approval would be subject to the improvements that they have put forward as far as that intersection. That's something that the commission can do. So if that's not adhered to, then they would not be able to get a certificate of occupancy. They would not be able to operate. So it wouldn't be a situation where the building's built, we're still waiting, or the Amazon is still waiting for approval from the state to have those improvements made, and they're operating. We can make a condition of approval that they need all of those approvals before they can operate.
Well, yes, I understand that, but I think what you just said is, what I'm indicating, that if we do have this condition of approval, which I understand, no question there, but again, the applicant doesn't have to wait to start building this.
No, they don't have to wait. They don't have to wait to start building it. But as far as getting a certificate of occupancy and operating,
exactly. Okay, yeah, that's exactly the way I see it. Okay. So yeah, I agree. We're on the same page there. But again, there's a number of items in that final traffic study that are concerns. They have not been addressed. There has been no mitigation suggested. So what I would also like to see then is that, we make it let's make it a condition of approval that those items listed in the peer review that haven't been addressed be addressed. And I think that OTSA would, want, again, according to the peer reviewer's comments, a satisfactory reasoning why they haven't suggested any mitigation. And I think that, quite honestly, we should list those as part of the statement of record. And I think we could just say, the items that have not been addressed in the final peer report instead of getting in there. Although in mine, I have them circled and underlined and, again, and I just want to reiterate the traffic concerns about Research Parkway. And I did not want to bring this up, and I'm not really going to bring it up. But when these regulations were constructed, Amazon did not exist. And I think that had Amazon existed when some of these regulations for specific uses, in this particular case, and you can all guess what use I'm talking about, I think our regulations would have been adjusted to, either allow or put more conditions, restrictions, whatever you want to call it, on this type of facility. And again, I'll go back to the applicant's comments. Delivery stations did not exist 10 years ago. Research Parkway was designed, yes, for commercial traffic and access to 68 and 91, but it was not designed to handle Amazon delivery traffic.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen, for not bringing that up.
It will come up later, but not now.
All right. Anyone else on the commission? Seeing no one would like to make any further comments, I guess at this point in time it would be appropriate to ask for a motion on the application, or if anyone would like to make a motion on the application. Mr. Benoit.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve application 401-21 special permit warehousing Montanti Construction 5 Research Parkway, a special permit for Montagny Construction for a 249,000 square foot distribution warehouse and an associated 1,264 parking spaces located on 179.85 acres at 5 Research Parkway as shown on plans entitled Proposed Development 5 Research Parkway, Wallingford, Connecticut, dated January 8, 2021, including all revisions made up to including plans dated July 7, 2021, subject to 1, copies of applicable approved DEP stormwater permits to be provided as follows. Stormwater permit for construction activities to be provided prior to commencement of site construction, and stormwater permit for industrial activity to be provided prior to issuance of certificate of occupancy. 2, that all proposed improvements receive approval from OSTA prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy. This includes all recommended lane configurations and signal timing details in the report from BL Companies entitled Traffic Analysis Addendum. Full report dated 6/18/2021, if not completed and approved, would negatively impact the level of service on the adjacent roadways. 3, that all final site plans include any changes that may have occurred as a result of the latest peer review dated July 9th, 2021, and any concurrent response from BL Companies dated July 12th, 2021. 4, that the town is notified at least 48 hours in advance before any opening takes place of the seasonal restricted gated parking area for the allowed seasonal usage dates of November 1st through February 1st, and the extra 35 days, whenever this may occur, necessary for Amazon Prime Days. 5, sedimentation and erosion control to be covered by bond in the amount of $1,375,000 required by the Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Commission in their approval dated April 7th, 2021. 6, owner, current or future, of property ensure compliance at all times with site operations and maintenance plan prepared by BL Companies dated October 2nd, 2020, revised to
You agreeing with that?
May 28th, 2021.
20.
Construction contingency plan for erosion control and emergency spills prepared by BL Companies dated October 20, 2020, and revised May 28, 2021. 7, conditions of approval and memorandum from Aaron O'Hare, environmental planner, dated May 5th, 2021. 8, comments from the Water and Sewer Division memorandum dated July 8th, 2021, including all conditions requested in previous correspondence referenced in the July 8th, 2021 memorandum. 9, those items listed in the traffic peer review be addressed and satisfactorily resolved. 10, comments of the fire marshal dated July 29th, 2021. 11, comments of Allison Kapuzinski, town engineer, dated April 28th, 2021, and July 1, 2021. Number 12, comments from the VN engineers, traffic consultant, in memorandum dated July 9th, 2021. And 13, use of van spaces, trailer parking spaces, and loading dock truck parking spaces to be limited to the trailers, trucks, and vans being used for the loading, unloading of merchandise being stored in the warehouses and other deliveries to from the warehouses. Site not to be used as a truck terminal, as in the only vehicles, truck, trailers, or vans that are to be parked, stored, or otherwise kept on the site are those currently being used for the above purposes. No vehicle repairs or washing is to occur on site, and the site shall not be used for long-term storage of inactive vehicles or vehicles not immediately associated with the warehouse activity on site.
Thank you, Mr. Benoit. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman, I would second that motion and ask immediately of the maker if I could amend your motion.
Yes. Go ahead, Mr.
All right.
Simmons.
Can we add number 14 by your count? No access to Carpenter Lane during entire construction period other than emergency vehicles?
So noted.
And on your number 2, that all proposed improvements receive approval from OSTA, here's the addition, and any changes, revisions, or improvements be completed prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy.
So noted.
Thank you.
Anyone else? And I'd like to also give you something for consideration on your number 5 as far as the, your number 4. For the seasonal dates, what I would propose is November 15th through January 15th, and the extra 15 days rather than 35 days. And I would also propose that the 120 spaces that are designated as associate spaces on their plans, that those also be restricted similar to the 350 spaces that have restricted on their plan.
So noted.
Good. Any other comments or discussion on the motion? Seeing none, begin voting with Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, based on my comments and the totality of the record, I can't support this for numerous reasons. Again, traffic being the concern, safety of that intersection on 68 and 91, the off-ramps causing traffic problems on 91, and numerous other issues which I have outlined, and so I will be voting no.
Mr. Fitzsimmons.
Yes.
Mr. Benoit.
No.
Mr. Allenson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Despite the numerous conditions of approval, I don't believe they would resolve the traffic issue, so I vote no.
And I vote yes, the application has been denied. And moving on. We'll just give the members of the public an opportunity to clear the chambers for just a moment. Or those who would like to stay, please stay. Excuse me? Yeah, we don't need a motion. That's what Gina said. All right, moving on. Our next item on our agenda is a zoning text amendment for the sale of recreational cannabis from the Planning and Zoning Commission, townwide. And Mr. Benoit, if you would please read the legal notice and note all correspondence for the record.
Mr. Chairman, legal notice application 902-10 zoning regulation text amendment to add section 6.34 to prohibit cannabis establishments in all zoning districts throughout the town of Wallingford. We have a memo from, or I should say interdepartment memo from the town engineer dated, August 31st, 2021. We have a memo from Jeffrey Cohan, Chair, Regional Planning Commission, to Kevin Begini, dated August 16th, 2021. We have a memo from Keith Rosenfeld, Regional Municipal Planner, to Planning and Zoning Commission, dated July 28th, 2021. We have a memo from J.H. Torrance Downs to our chairman, Jim Seichter, July 28th, 2021. We have a memo from Janice Small to Bill Dickinson, Mayor, dated July 30th, 2021, and that's all I got. I didn't have that one. And I have a memo from Stephen Civitelli and Bill Dickinson to the Wallingford Planning and Zoning Commission dated July 19th, 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Benoit. And I guess, Mr. Bikini, if you would just give us just a brief overview of what we're doing here and what's being proposed, and the reason for it being proposed, if you would.
It was initiated by the mayor and Mr. Civitelli, the health director, and public health. And
If you could just please pull the microphone just a little bit closer, I'd appreciate that.
I think you've hopefully you've read the letter from the mayor. I think it outlines his concerns regarding the public health and safety when making this determination. The statute actually allows the town to prohibit cannabis establishments in all zones throughout the town. So that is what the mayor and Mr. Civitelli have proposed to add a new section 6.34 that defines cannabis establishment and also cannabis as defined in the Connecticut General Statutes. And cannabis establishments would be prohibited in all zones throughout the town. I believe the mayor was supposed to be here tonight to explain. But
Well, we'll entertain questions or comments from the public, but I guess I would point out first that probably several years ago, this commission made a change to our regulations that indicated any approved use would have to be legal both at the local, state, and federal level. So that's in existence right now. Based on those regulations, the growing, selling, what have you, dispensaries for cannabis would not be allowed here in town as federal regulations. It's still illegal under the I believe it's the Substance Control Act. However, with the I guess Public Act 21-1, the towns, all towns and cities now are required to take action on either having the sale, growing of cannabis in their various communities. They're required to take action on that, and that's the reason why this is being brought up to the commission at the present time. So at this particular point in time, are any members of the commission like to make any comments concerning this this application? Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I've got a sore throat, yet I'm doing a lot of talking tonight. So, just a couple things. And first is really a point of order. You know, Mr. Benoit read the letter to Mr. Pagini from the South Central Regional Planning Commission, which I happen to be the chairperson of. And, you know, at our last meeting, this issue came up, and another town had basically the same issue as far as, you know, cannabis. The point of order is that both towns received the letter from elected officials, meaning our mayor sent the request to the Regional Planning Commission, and the other town had their first selectman send the letter, similar letter to the Regional Planning Commission. Technically, we only take recommendations from Planning and Zoning Commission or the town planner. And so it was, I don't know, inappropriate's maybe not a good word, but you know, we still acted on the request, but technically it needs to come from Planning and Zoning Commission or our town planner. And you know, it may seem like a minor point, but it actually generated a lot of discussion among, you know, the attendees. And, you know, I won't get into, you know, the reasonings and stuff. So, you know, Mr. Pagini, you know, going forward, you know, if we can, you know, do the right thing here in Wallingford, I'd appreciate it. So, you know, minor thing, we acted on it in good faith, and, but I just wanted to point that out. You know, in the past, everything's been fine. Yeah, you know, I think that, you know, we may need to take a little closer look at this and the regulations we have on the books already about, you know, the federal illegality of cannabis, marijuana, pot, whatever you want to call it. You know, I don't know how many times we have been approached by Economic Development Commission saying, yeah, you know, you got to loosen your regulations so we can attract new businesses to Wallingford. This is a new business. People will be employed by this. And I think Wallingford should step up to the plate and really have some serious discussion on what we allow. You know, this is going to be a major industry. We have industrial land that could be used, you know, to grow this stuff. You know, that would be a perfect use for, you know, one of the industrial areas. So, you know, I understand where, you know, we're kind of restricted, but I think it would be a prudent avenue of discussion to start thinking a little out of the box, creatively, to you know, allow for some of these future uses that you know, are going to employ a lot of people. And I think Wallingford, you know, could be, you know, one of those areas. And again, we've been approached by folks to change our regulations to allow certain businesses. You know, that being said, you know, I thought about the, you know, comment that, well, it's still illegal in, you know, on the federal books. Well, that's, you know, again, true, but they have allowed states' rights to deal with this, and they haven't really enforced, you know, what the states have, you know, enacted. I don't know if they ever will, and, you know, based on some other precedents similar, I think, that we've encountered, the fact that if the federal folks did, you know, try and override states' rights, there's a precedent or legal argument, I think, that could be set saying, well, you never enforced this in the past. Why are you doing it now? So anyway, I think we should, you know, give this better consideration than just saying, no, we're going to prohibit it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Cohan. Other commission members like to make any comments? Anyone else? Okay. Yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had 2 points. One is in the cover letter, the July 19th, 2021 cover letter from the mayor and Mr. Civitelli, there's a reference to the idea that this issue can be revisited upon appropriate testing. And I'm wondering what that means. because I don't know, I mean, I'm a little unclear as to what we're voting on here. Is this something permanent? Is it temporary? Is it something that we're going to be having workshops on? You know, I can understand the idea of, you know, passing this temporarily to keep the status quo. I could also understand the idea that we're voting on this and saying no, sort of as a permanent measure. But it's just unclear to me what we see as what we're voting on here and what we see going forward. What is our strategy? What are we doing? That's number one. Number two, and this is just a technical thing, on the proposed regulation in the definition section for cannabis establishment, I think I would include, after the word transporter, I think I would include of cannabis as defined in Public Act 21-1. Without that in there, I think it's a little, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I think that's what I would include, but I think that aside from that, I just think, you know, I don't have a problem approving this, but I do think that we should have an idea of exactly what we're doing when we say, well, if we do approve this.
Thank you. I guess I just going to make a quick comment, and I'll let Mr. Fitzsimmons. I think I'm very clear that understanding of what we're saying is that this is not allowed. I think that's very clear by what's being presented. But I think, Mr. Fitzsimmons, you had a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Himes and I've spoken in the past. In Connecticut, we have what they call permissive zoning. So if we don't take this action, then it would be deemed a permitted use. So the first function is, if we take no action, it would be deemed a permitted use in town. So I would agree with the prior speakers. I mean, you know, where we're going today, what we're saying is, no, it's not a permitted use. As we all talk about, you know, in our planning hat, anybody can come in and request a revision or a change to our current regs when additional research is deemed appropriate. But the state legislature, the Public Act, made it very clear that if we don't take action, it will be a permitted use. So I will be supporting the passage of this new section, but obviously, you know, I always say the zoning book is a living document. We change it, you know, almost every other meeting. So I think, you know, things change, then certainly we could revisit the matter. But I think as written, I would support it, and even with your suggested change, I support that.
Yes, Mr. Hine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me be clear. I'm in favor of this. It's just the cover letter makes it seem like this could be temporary, you know, it will be revisited. And I just want to be clear that, you know, this is a permanent thing. I mean, you know, somebody could always file an application to revise or change or amend the regs. But that's what we're doing tonight, is we're saying, no, we're not allowing it.
Anyone else? Mr. Menard, I see you down there. Do you have any comments? Okay, French. This is a public hearing. Any members of the public would like to speak on the application, please come forward, and or the regulation rather, please come forward. State your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Ken Welch. I live at 21 Pleasant Street here in Wallingford. I'm also president of the Coalition for Better Wallingford, as most of you know. And I'm here speaking not only as the president of the coalition, but a grandfather, a father, and as you may or may not know, we've been dealing with this issue firsthand from a health threat. I can tell you that right now we're getting as many calls about marijuana addiction as we are about opioids. And they're serious. And the amount of time it takes with this creative economic opportunity, as Mr. Cohan stated, this is an unbelievable Pandora's box. And we're dealing with it right now, every day. So I have a problem with saying, because the feds say it's illegal, we're just going to latch on to that. I think it needs to be bolder. I think it needs to say, in Wallingford, we care about our kids, we care about our families, and you're not going to bring it in our town lines. In any state where this has been legalized, less than half of the towns have agreed to it. Probably the most telling comment I can share with you, and I apologize because I'm a little nervous because I'm so passionate about this. The most telling comment I've heard in the last 5 years came from the governor, the former governor of Colorado. Just last year, he said, the single biggest mistake of his life was allowing that bill to pass. It has been a disaster. People are dying over this, and it's only going to accelerate. Are we going to stop it at our town lines? No. But we have an opportunity to do the right thing here. And I would ask you all to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Other members of the public?
Good evening, everybody. Sean Doherty, 2 Windswept Hill Road, Wallingford, of course, and I'm also the director of the YMCA and also co-chair of the Wallingford's Coalition for Healthy Wallingford. Just to tell you a little bit about our YMCA missions to strengthen the foundation of the community through programs and services and relationships that build a healthy spirit, mind, and body. The Coalition for Healthy Lions is to engage the community in healthy lifestyles while impacting health outcomes and the quality of life for all residents. I join you tonight to share our concerns with regards to the sale of recreational marijuana within our town. And I ask for your support with the prohibition text amendment that you received. Allowing the sale of recreational cannabis increases the access for youth while decreasing the youth's perception of harm from the substance. A few statistics that I'm sure you're aware of, and kind of getting to what Ken had mentioned. Teenage marijuana use is at the highest level in 30 years, and today's teens are more likely to use marijuana than they are tobacco. In Colorado, as Ken mentioned earlier as well, data showed that there was a 26% increase in cannabis use in ages 12 to 17 in just 3 years following the legalization of recreational use. I could just leave you tonight by saying the YMCA, Wallingford Community Health Alliance, will continue to work hard for our community in advocating for health and well-being of our residents, especially the most treasured, our youth. Thanks for your time, and thanks for listening.
Thank you. Other members of the public?
Dickinson, 112 Grebe Road. I think you have my signature on a letter and the health director's signature. He would be here this evening, except a health issue of great significance prevents him from attending. We are very concerned about this issue. Make no mistake about it. We should learn from mistakes as a society. Opioids. Failure to test long-term use. And now we are tragically involved in more deaths every year from opioids. there'd been testing in the beginning, long-term use, I believe, would not exist as a problem. Vaping, no testing. In fact, there were even rules proposed to prevent any sales to young people, all ignored, and now we reap the consequences. So here comes marijuana. No testing. There are various elements, I'll call them elements or chemicals involved in marijuana that have received some testing, but as an entity, as a whole, marijuana has not been tested. Plenty of anecdotal and other evidence studies from European countries about harms, but this country has not tested it. Recognizing that, the United States Senate, subcommittee of the United States Senate, turned out a report that advises, for a number of reasons, comprehensive clinical testing before we move any further with regard to marijuana. So with the federal rule, it's illegal. With a change in attitude at the federal level, anyone involved at the local level can be prosecuted. So you have this disparity existing where banks can't use, you can't use a bank, a federally backed up bank, if you're earning money from marijuana. A doctor can't prescribe it. Hospitals can't use it because they could all be adversely affected by their federal licenses. So we're expected as a society to say, well, that's okay. We'll trust that somehow this will turn out okay. That is not our job, gentlemen. We clearly have something that needs a lot more study. And how much money justifies taking the risk that there is serious harm involved here? How much money from business? I don't think there's enough money in the world to offset the harm that can be done when we have the opportunity to pursue testing. Find out, is this safe, is this healthy, or not? The testimony at the state level. The American Medical Association says no. The Connecticut Medical Society says no. CDC, every time we turn around anything regarding health, turn to the CDC. What do they say? The CDC says no at the federal level. The Department of Health says no. The Institutes of Health says, they say no. We have a duty to say, for our jurisdiction, for our area of concern, we have a duty to protect the public health, regardless of who might make money or how many people it might employ. Public health outweighs those concerns. So I urge you, the evidence is there to support saying, let's use common sense, reason, and protect the public health and safety. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Other members of the public who would like to speak? Oh, yes, this lady in front. No, please, you, ma'am, and then gentlemen, if you'll be next.
Good evening. My name is Jessie DePonte. I am the acting executive director here at the Coalition for a Better Wallingford. My address is 512 Fifth Ridge Road. I'm a lifelong Wallingford resident. So I just wanted to echo Ken's comments earlier. We run a biannual survey in our public schools, and we find often that children or young adults get their marijuana or their alcohol from older peers. So obviously we want to make sure that even though, you know, young kids aren't necessarily able to go into stores and purchase these items, we know that they have access to them. We see kids come through the door all the time. We are the boots on the ground. So it's not uncommon for them to come in and talk to us about their abuse. They're very open with us about their, recreational marijuana use. And we just want to make sure that we are supporting our young adults and our teens. And we want to provide resources so that they don't feel the need to self-medicate with marijuana. So we are trying to do that. We've got great partners in town that help us do that, but we just want to make it a little bit easier for teens to come talk to us, and we don't want to open more doors to our young adults using marijuana. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, and the next gentleman, please.
My name is William Butker, Highland Drive, Wallingford. I'm also a regional director for the National Narcotic Officers Association of U.S. And I'm a former police officer, retired from the town of Wallingford. For Commissioner Cohen, you made mention that you thought the property up on the north part of Wallingford would be great for growing marijuana. I just want to let you know that you should do some Googling on that, because marijuana is the greatest environmental disaster that's happening right now in the United States. As a matter of fact, in Colorado, if they got rid of the ingrowns that they have there, they would reduce their emissions, greenhouse emissions, by 80%. They also, at one time, they did a study in Colorado that the amount of carbon dioxide emissions in Colorado is equal to about 38,000 cars on a highway. So I think you should look at that a little bit more. Also in California, out of 482 communities, only 161 allow marijuana sales. In Colorado alone, 66% of the jurisdictions do not allow marijuana sales. You're not breaking ground. And for your information, I think you read it in the paper, Southington just passed an ordinance prohibiting marijuana sales in their community. And I believe Cheshire is also looking at doing the exact same thing, as well as North Haven. In California, 24 counties allow marijuana sales out of 58 counties. So you're not breaking ground here. And in every other state that does have legalized marijuana, there are impact statements that will shock you. Most of them were just stated by the mayor, by the YMCA, and by for Better Wallingford. So I think it's very appropriate for you to do the right thing and say that Wallingford is not going to put up with this. And as the mayor says, the Senate, your own Senate of the United States voted against it. Of course, Washington, D.C., there's politics, and there's always politics, which makes no sense half the time of what's going on down there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Any other members of the public who would like to speak? Seeing none at this point in time, I would then close the public hearing portion, and, well, actually, I'd request a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we close the public hearing for application 902-10, zoning text amendment, sale of recreational cannabis, PZC, townwide.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons, voting beginning with Mr. Cohan.
Yes.
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 And yes. Any discussion, any further comments from commission members? I guess I would just like to make one. I know initially, I indicated that one of the reasons why I was opposed to, rather in favor of this, was because it's illegal at the federal level, but also the concern with respect to the health concerns that it poses. Over the weekend, I was reading a report. It's from the Rocky Mountain High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area, and they put out a report, and this is the September 2021 report. And it's rather lengthy. There was certainly in the executive summary was a couple pages, but the report was quite lengthy. And it was very eye-opening to me as far as what some of the impact and the effects of marijuana has, at least just in Colorado. I think as some of the members of the public indicated, there is, I think, with some people, the perception that all of Colorado is they have cannabis throughout the state. As one of the members of the public indicated, it's only 66% of the local jurisdictions that ban medical as well as recreational marijuana. Another thing that was pointed out that since 2013, just traffic deaths for people who tested positive for marijuana increased 138%, while all traffic deaths only increased 29%. And there's a whole load of different statistics and comments that certainly raised concerns for me. So again, when I said I was in favor of this, it wasn't simply because it's based upon federal law. It's based upon certainly information, that I've availed of. So with that, any further comments from any commission members? We've closed the public hearing, sir.
I realize, but just a point of order. I thought the motion just said recreational. This is cannabis, period. This isn't just recreational. Did the motion say recreational?
Would our recording secretary please read back what the motion?
It's not the motion. The motion is not the word.
Motion was just to close the public hearing.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
It's on the agenda,
The agenda is not.
The agenda is
Doesn't
not
match the
correct.
motion.
but the motion that's coming will not have recreational on it.
Just do not put that.
No, I apologize. I didn't write word for word what you said for the motion. I was going to get that from the recording.
It's this referral.
I think we have an issue here.
Yeah, it's on the agenda.
I think what we have here is an issue concerning our agenda. And our agenda indicates it's a zoning text amendment for the sale of recreational cannabis. And that's what our public,
Our
our
notice
legal notice,
does not say it.
what does our legal notice say?
Cannabis establishment, it's just
In zoning.
recreational only on our agenda, not on the legal notice.
I believe, yes, Mr. Mr. Hine, I believe you were going to.
Mr. Chairman, I think the safe thing would be to go forward on a motion tonight. If we can consult with the legal department afterwards, and if we are informed that we have to issue a renotice and amend it or do it again in next month, then we can do it again. But I think at least the safe thing would be to go forward tonight.
But the legal notice actually doesn't say recreational.
Right.
Can we strike recreational from the agenda?
We can do anything we like from the agenda, whether or not.
I'm asking
I
if
think,
it's legal.
I believe that we could, because our legal notice does not specifically, does not say recreational. It says prohibit cannabis establishments. Correct. And I would let one of our attorneys chime in here, because unfortunately our town attorney or corporate counsel is not here, but it is possible to add to the agenda an item.
Right.
Yeah,
And I think if we were to look to correct or add to the agenda or correct the agenda, that we're including or we're limiting cannabis, the sale of cannabis, rather than simply recreational cannabis.
Mr. Chairman, I think the operative document is the public notice, and the public notice is not limited to recreational cannabis. I think you would be safe to go forward. If the legal department says otherwise afterwards, we can always take it up again next month, but I think the operative document is the legal notice.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we amend the zoning text amendment, sale of recreational cannabis, PZC, townwide, be amended to reflect the true legal notice of, let me make sure I do it right, prohibit cannabis establishments in all zoning districts throughout the town of Wallingford.
Do we have a second?
Second.
And who seconded that?
I did.
Mr. Fitzsimmons? Okay, voting beginning with Mr. Cohen, please.
Yes.
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 And yes. Now that we've solved that issue. At
Now.
this- Yes, at this point in time, I would entertain a motion on the application.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve application 902-21 zoning text amendment to add section 6.24 to the Wallingford zoning regulations to prohibit cannabis establishments in all zones throughout the town of Wallingford as proposed in language entitled Cannabis Establishments dated July 19, 2021, because of the totality of the evidence presented.
Do we have a second on the motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons. Voting beginning with Mr. Cohen, please.
Yes.
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 And yes, the applications, or the amendment has been approved. And thank you, Mr. Hine, for providing us with some hopefully very accurate legal advice. And please, don't feel free to send us a bill. And at this point in time, moving down to our next item, which is a special permit, Wallingford Business Park LLC, 718 North Colony Road. Again, Mr. Vanoy, would you please read the legal notice and note all correspondence for the record?
Mr. Chairman, legal notice, application 408-21, special permit for Wallingford Business Park LLC, located 718 North Colony Road, to allow car storage for an adjacent auto dealership and to reuse an existing portion of the building for a self-storage facility with landscaping and parking lot improvements, zoning RF40. Correspondence are as follows. We have a memo from Kevin Pagani to the Wallingford Business Park LLC, August 16th, 2021. We have a interoffice departmental referral from the fire marshal dated August 10th, 2021. We have a fax from, looks like the fire marshal also, dated, dated September 8th, 2021. We have a memo from the environmental planner dated September 8th, 2021. We have a memo from Eric Kruger to Kevin Pagini, town planner, dated September 9th, 2021. And we have a drawings, and they are titled Wallingford Business Park LLC, dated, let's see, 9/3/21.
Thank you, Mr. Benoit. And if the applicant and/or its representative introduce themselves and begin their presentation.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Bernard Pellegrino. I'm an attorney with the Pellegrino Law Firm in New Haven, and I represent the applicant, Wallingford Business Park LLC, who is the owner and applicant. For the record, I agree, legal notice controls. With me this evening is David Occolini. David's a principal in the ownership entity. And Alan Bongiovanni, he's our project civil engineer, and he'll walk you through the site plan in a minute. I'll just kind of introduce our applications. The property is 718 North Colony Road here in town, obviously. It's a 34-acre site. It's located in your RF40 zoning district. It's the former Islet manufacturing facility. I'm sure you are all aware of the site. It's a multi-use site, manufacturing, wholesaling, distributing, uses, and we're here tonight seeking a special permit for parking of automobiles for one of our tenants, which is Toyota of Wallingford. This use has been ongoing on site since prior to our acquisition of the property. And when we were last before you with some site changes to some unloading and truck depot area in the back of the site, that issue came to light, and we said we would come back and get the special permit or request a special permit. And Alan will show you when he gets up there where those cars are parked, in case you don't know. It's excess inventory as cars are delivered to Toyota, but there's not enough room on the site. They will store the cars here and then bring them onto the display area on site. That with inventory of automobiles in such high demand, that those sites, that space has been vacant on our site because cars are coming off the lot as quick as they can get them. But even over the years, you know, there's cars come and cars go. They're screened, they're fenced, they're protected, and there's no other use of the dealership on this site except for the parking of these excess inventory vehicles until they can get them onto their lot. I would suggest that the use for this small area of the site will not have any negative impact. It meets your special permit criteria. In fact, it's been ongoing for many years. And so we would hope that you'd look favorably upon that special permit portion of our presentation. We've also filed a site plan application. The site plan application really involves two things. One is, again, when we were here back a couple of years ago, there was a request to look at aesthetically that fence and the landscaping and planting along the side road there, and so we've proposed some slatting in the fence, increased landscaping with plantings as depicted on the plan, to protect and provide some screening to the, I guess, the northeast section of the site. And also, we're seeking approval as part of the site plan application for a change of use for a portion of the front of the property for self-storage facility, some changes in the configuration of the driveway, some repaving of the parking, and some additional landscaping in that area as well for aesthetic improvement. There are some changes to the facade of the building, which also will improve the look and the aesthetic nature of that front portion of the building, which is the entry to the site, and I think that would be a noted improvement to the site. With that, unless you have any questions for me, I turn it over to Alan to just kind of run you through the site plan.
Thank you, Bernie. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, staff. For the record, my name is Alan Bongiovanni. I'm a licensed land surveyor in the state of Connecticut, working with the applicant before you this evening. As Bernie talked about, it's a 34.5 acre site, former eyelet factory. It's about 332,000 square feet of building. Presently, it's being used mostly as warehouse. There's some distribution, but primarily it's a warehousing use. The applicant is asking to convert the front portion of the building and then a portion of a two-story behind the front office into self-storage. It's in essence the same type of use, but it's now a retail storage use as opposed to a large operator doing warehousing. The footprint of the building is not proposing to change. What we are proposing to do is do some minor modifications to the parking in this area, clean up the front entry. Right now it's paved around this. The island is very large and unuseful the way it is, so we're proposing to modify the whole front entry, reducing by about 2,300 square foot of impervious area, and then improving this whole front facade of the building to make it more attractive. The existing look of the building, the stone facade panel in this area, brick, aluminum frame windows across the whole facade of the building. The proposal is to remove all of the windows, replace them as shown on the plans with a different style window and something energy efficient, but taking a lot of that fenestration, removing it and putting in a metal panel in a navy blue to go with the light tan brick along the facade, so it'll give it a fresh look for the proposed use. The overall site improvements are, as I stated earlier, improvement, reduction in paving in this area, creating parking designated specifically for the self-storage use, 1 employee space, 9 customer spaces. On the side of the building, the north side of the office wing, 2 doors would be created, loading doors. They're not full loading docks, but they'd be 18 inches high. One would be an 8-foot door for, let's say, a pickup truck or a small box truck. The other would be a 6-foot door for most personal vehicles to go there. In order to enable this building to be utilized, interior to the building would be a freight elevator, so that space on the 2nd floor in this area here could be utilized. It's the developer's intention to go to about 17,000 to 18,000 square feet of mini storage warehouse space in this building. Beyond what we're proposing right in front of the building, which includes a complete landscape design, but also improvements from the exterior of the site. As you enter from the northwest corner of the site, you come down Beaumont Street, you see the fence, you see the overgrown weeds. It's not the most attractive site. So what we're proposing to do is basically take the corner off of that fence, bringing it back, as I've shown here, and make a nice landscape buffer so that it'll screen what's behind it and make it an attractive entrance towards the property, as we're proposing to do with the front entry. Along with that, all of the fencing along both Beaumont and North Colony would be all the weeds, all the overgrowth be removed, the lawn area between the pavement and the fencing to be reestablished and repaired as necessary, and then slats put in that fence, privacy slats, so that the permitted uses on site now, and then hopefully the continued use, if the special permit is granted, for this 200 by 200 foot fenced in area for Toyota Wallingford, they would have better screening than what has kind of happened over the years. This applicant has owned the property about 8 years. To touch on the Toyota Wallingford, this existed sometime before them. I'm not sure exactly how long, but it has been an ongoing use. The amount of vehicles ebbs and flows. Now there's a chip shortage. You can't get cars, so there's not any new cars for sale on there, but that's what it's used for, primarily for the storage of new cars. Our first sheet, our overall parking plan, we have a parking table. By zoning, 332,000 square feet. You need 1 space for every 1,500. By zoning, we need 222 spaces. This plan demonstrates that we have the area on the parking lot, on the site to do that, mostly within the paved areas that we have already. But the actual need is about 57 spaces, as I've detailed here, and that's what we're proposing. We show that it meets your requirements, but that we're not going to stripe all those additional spaces because it's warehouse, and warehouse doesn't really require what the zoning says we need. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Commission members with any questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I don't think we have anything further, Mr. Chair. We appreciate your time, and you've had a long night already, so.
I guess I would just have a couple of just quick comments.
Sure.
You know, I appreciate the fact that you're looking to do addressing the screening for the Toyota, the vehicles that were parked there. Candidly, you're about a year late coming back to the commission on that.
It's been a weird.
Although I do understand, certainly in the last year because of the pandemic, when I drive by, during that period of time, there hasn't been a lot of cars parked there because I think of some of the issues that that were pointed out here, that there's just a shortage of vehicles. But again, I would like to see before you do anything with the self-storage that the items that you're talking about, as far as the parking lot, the sliding of the fences, the cleaning things up, that all be done before you start working on the self-storage, because that's, again, the parking area, and that was something that candidly needed to be addressed about a year ago. I understand and appreciate why that perhaps hasn't been done, but I'd hate to see that take more time.
Sure. Would it be fair to say, because some of that landscaping work is going to be done together, that perhaps that there be no CO for the self-storage until all of the work contained on the plan? Would that be acceptable to?
Sounds reasonable to me. Hopefully it sounds reasonable to other commission members.
Our plan was to do it concurrently. By the way, I'm David Occhiolini, I'm sorry. We could certainly stage it, it's just inefficient. And I do apologize. I know I was supposed to be back here a year ago, and we talked about it.
Sir, if you could just pull that just a little bit closer.
I'm
I
sorry.
keep getting a red light flashing here, and in a minute they're just going to give you a shock.
I just did that with the dog. So we knew we were supposed to be back here a year ago, and certainly we are aware of the issues on the site. We're not at all afraid of addressing them with the site. The fact is, we had to come up with some reasonable plans to get from point A to point B, and I think we have done that. If you need something, we're happy to address it. But the bottom line is, we are trying to clean up the site. We want to clean up the appearance of the building so that we can get a higher and better use out of it. But, you know, we all know what it is today. It's an old warehouse, and...
No, exactly. So would I take it you'd be agreeable, though, that everything would be done prior to the issuance of a certificate?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Again, this is it's a public hearing. Is any members of the public like to speak on the application? If you would, please come forward, state your name and address. And I don't see anybody eager to raise their hand, so I'll bring it back. Mr. Pagini, do you have any comments that you'd like to make on the application?
No, they've all been addressed during the course of the review.
Okay. So at this point in time, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we close the public hearing of application 408-21, special permit Wallingford Business Park LLC, 718 North Colony Road.
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons. Voting beginning with Mr. Cohan, please.
Yes.
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 And yes, entertain now a motion on the application.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve application 408-21, special permit request for Wallingford Business Park LLC, located at 718 North County Road, to allow car storage for an adjacent auto dealership and site plan approval to reuse an existing portion of the building for a self-storage facility with landscaping and parking lot improvements on plans entitled Resurvey prepared for Wallingford Business Park LLC, dated June 20, 2021, revised to September 3rd, 2021, subject to 1, comments from the Fire Marshal's Office dated August 10th, 2021, 2, an erosion and sedimentation control bond in the amount of $2,000, 3, that any proposed signage receive a sign permit from the Wallingford Planning and Zoning Office. 4, comments in the interoffice memorandum from Environmental Planner Aaron O'Hare to the Planning and Zoning Department, dated September 8th, 2021. 5, comments in the interoffice memorandum from Eric Kruger, Senior Engineer, Water and Sewer Division, to the Planning and Zoning Department, dated September 9th, 2021. And 6, all landscaping is completed before certificate of occupancy is issued.
We have a motion on the application. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons. Voting beginning with Mr. Cohan.
Yes?
Yes.
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 And yes, your application's been approved. Have a good evening, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good to see you.
All right, it brings us to our next item, a new business, which is a site plan revision, MDT Realty, 31 North Plains Highway. Again, if the applicant and/or its representatives would please come forward to begin preparing for the presentation. And Mr. Benoit, if you would please note all correspondence for the record.
Have any correspondence?
Here you go. Three.
We have a memo from Michael Ott to Kevin Pagini, dated, let's see, August 15th, 2021. We have a interdepartmental referral from the environmental planner, dated August 4th, 2021. And we have a memo from the Department of Engineering to Planning and Zoning Commission, dated August 31st, 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Benoit. If the applicant and/or its representative, please introduce themselves and begin the presentation.
Yes, thank you. Commissioners, my name is Rosalind Page, professional land surveyor from Winterbourne Land Services, with an office at 604 Wallingford, Connecticut, representing the applicant this evening, MDT Realty.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Michael Ott. I'm a licensed professional engineer and land surveyor.
Sir, could you pull that just a little bit closer to you so you'll be able to pick your voice up a little bit better?
Summing. Is that better?
The light's a little closer. The light's still flashing.
Better?
Oh, that's great.
Okay. Sorry. For the record, I'm Mike Ott. I'm a licensed professional engineer and land surveyor with Summer Hill Civil Engineers and Land Surveyors in Madison.
Thank you. So the reason we're here in front of you this evening is that this application for 31 North Plains Highway was originally approved. We received site plan approval from this commission in June of 2020 for a proposed storage garage to be located to the rear of the existing residential structure that is on the lot. This is located in the I-40 zone. It's a 20,000 square foot lot. And you approved as I said, in June of 2020, a proposed storage garage of 2,900 square feet with associated parking and landscaping. And one of the conditions of approval were that we satisfy the town engineer in terms of her comments about on-site storm drainage system. So we have been working with her since then, and we have come up with a design that we believe meets with her approval, but it is not exactly the way she worded her original approval request. So since it was a condition of approval, the town planner felt it was appropriate for us to come back to you and request a revision to the original site plan approval. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Ott to give you an explanation of the on-site storm drainage system that we have designed in conjunction with the town engineer.
So as Ms. Page said, we've had conversations with the town engineer, and I believe we're in agreement regarding the design approach. So the system consists of an inlet at the rear of the building in the parking area that would direct stormwater runoff to 3 rows of 4x4x8 precast concrete galleries. Those galleries would be a storage reservoir below the ground. We did test pits in the area of the system to make sure that the soil and groundwater conditions were such that stormwater could be infiltrated, and they were the proper conditions, and they are. And we provided the town engineer with a computation showing that the entire runoff volume from the 25-year design frequency rainfall event, which is some 4,000 square feet or so, or about almost 5 inches of depth over the drainage area, can actually be stored in the system and then temporarily stored and then allowed to infiltrate into the underlying natural soil. So water quality has been taken care of with this system in accordance with Connecticut DEP's Stormwater Quality Manual, as well as I said, the runoff from a 25-year recurrence interval rainfall event. I think probably the most important thing is that the town engineer is in agreement with our approach, and she has asked in a memorandum, which I'm sure the commission members have, that a drainage easement be put in place over the adjoining property. And I'll let Ms. Page explain the ownership of both our site and the adjoining property.
So both this particular piece of property, 31 North Plains Highway, is owned by MDT Realty, as is number 25 North Plains Highway, is also owned by the same entity. As you will recall, MDT Realty, the property on 25 North Plains Highway is a commercial area with a number of buildings and parking, which MDT Realty rents out to various different commercial entities. So both these properties are owned by the same owner. They kind of function as one whole piece of property, but they are in fact two separate deeds, two separate parcels, and the owner would like to keep it that way, but he has expressed willingness to put an easement on number 25 North Plains Highway to allow ingress and egress for number 31, and for any utilities, and also for the right to drain stormwater if necessary from number 31 over number 25 North Plains Highway. So he is willing to put those easements on the land records.
Take it that's the extent of your presentation, is that correct? Good.
That is correct.
Thank you. Commission members with any questions for the applicant? Mr. Bikini, any comments, any questions, any concerns?
No, I have no further comments.
Okay. Thank you. This is, it's not a public hearing, but we certainly allow members of the public to comment on an application. Anyone in the public like to comment? And I don't believe I see anyone that would. At this point in time, if there's no further comments from the applicant or no further comments from commission members, I'd entertain a motion on the application.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve application 206-20R, site plan revision request to change the original condition of approval as the applicant cannot meet the requirements of condition 4 on plans entitled Improvement Location Survey Proposed Storage Warehouse Land, NF, dated April 22, 2020, subject to comments from Allison Kapuscinski, Town Engineer, dated August 31st, 2021.
Thank you. We have a motion on the application. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons. Voting beginning with Mr. Cohan.
Yes.
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 And yes, the application's been approved. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And going down, I take it on bond releases reductions, there's the Blickfield Quality Subaru that's not ready to be released. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct. I still have not received as-built for
Okay.
the bond release.
All right, before we jump down to reports and officers, there was an addendum to the agenda, which is item 7A, discussion for workshops pertaining to the zoning text amendment for IX and I-5 and zones. I guess at this point in time, I'd like to discuss, I believe all commission members, end of last week, received the proposed text amendments for the I-5, IX, the watershed zones that our town planner as well as our town engineer had worked on. From my perspective, I certainly think all commission members certainly share the same opinion. I think this is something that we would want to hold at least one and possibly two workshops on, but certainly do them in a very expeditious manner because there are some notable changes that are being recommended, and I think those should be discussed and should be discussed in a very expeditious manner, so we can act on, amend, do it as we see fit on those zoning text amendment changes. So I would like, if at all possible, to have a workshop at either the latter portion of this month or prior to our October meetings on October 14th, I believe. Is that right?
13th, I believe.
13th. So again, I don't put it up to commission members as far as people's agendas, people's schedules, as far as how they feel about scheduling a workshop and as far as what dates may or may not work for people. All suggestions?
Mr. Chairman, I'm good for the last Monday in October, the 25th, which would be almost 2 weeks after our regular monthly.
Okay. Other individuals? Yeah, Mr. Allenson.
Mr. Chairman, unfortunately, the last Monday doesn't work for me, but we've done very well with that Survey Monkey thing that we've used in the past, where a few dates have gone out and we've all emailed back. I would suggest maybe doing something like that again.
Okay.
Yeah, I could set up a doodle poll or Survey Monkey, whichever you prefer. So.
I think I think everyone prefers the monkey.
Oh, I like the doodle.
All right, so again.
And is there any particular style room or format that you would prefer that I look into? Anything different from this setting, or?
Well, I think let's first decide on what the dates are going to be. But normally we've held them at I'm not sure I never get the number right, 315, what have you, on the third floor. I mean, that seems to be able to accommodate a fair number of people, and I think it works a little bit better as far as having a workshop, interacting with the public, and all of that. I think it's a bit more of a, I don't want to use the word friendly atmosphere, but a more cordial atmosphere. And just make sure that there's a cage for the monkey. All right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I just have a question on the format of the document. And, I looked at it, but I really didn't dig deep into this. Does this represent the existing regulations here in this document with, complete, strikeouts of, changes we're proposing, striking out that text if it's being eliminated?
I think you're looking for more for kind of a red line document or so.
Yeah, I kind of had a tough time.
I think we all did.
Oh, okay.
Well, I think, candidly, I think when we were whenever it was a year ago, when we were just going through this, the prior one, initially, I think it was very confusing to try to match things up.
Yeah.
And I think we're all struggling with that. So I guess I would ask Mr. Pagini, because I think what Mr. Cohen is looking for is really a red line document to show, here's the existing regulations, and now here are what the changes are, what's been stricken out, what
Yes.
sections had been, added, and so I think that would be certainly very helpful for the commission. I'm sure for members of the public, it would be also equally helpful.
So we did that format. It's just we, suggested whole new sections. So those sections are in red. The strikeouts on the existing sections are on there. And then the new definitions are outlined in red, and the existing definitions with the changes to those existing definitions are outlined in red as well. I could explain as much detail as you need. Just we thought it would be easier to review the WPD by taking out everything and then, replacing it as a whole new section instead of striking out everything that we're changing in terms of the WPD.
Yeah, see, I would like to see the old regulation, though. And yeah, the way you did it is fine, but I want to see the old stuff as well.
We kept the old stuff in the IX, so everything there that we changed is there. The only section we did that in was the watershed protection district, so I could, see if I can go through and match up what's changed and what wasn't.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks.
Sure.
Thank you. And again, with that, Mr. Pagini, if you just take us through the reports of officers and staff.
Any questions on any of the change of use? I think most of them were already approved.
Anyone? I think you're on a roll.
Amy, do you have anything to add for your, I know we do have a use variance request for the ZBA meeting next week in September that I believe that we would like the commission to weigh in on. It's at 68 North Turnpike. I could have Amy explain.
Actually, our whole agenda, or not whole agenda, but half of the agenda for the ZBA meeting in October is a result of violations. And as your regulations state, you should be getting a copy of said application. So instead you have me to sort of explain them. So should you choose to issue a report in support or against, you can do so through Kevin, who's very familiar with these issues. The most egregious one, if you will, is number 2 on our legal notice, which is a use variance, as Mr. Pagini had just said, for 68 North Turnpike Road. That's a DD40 zone. It's a gas station, which is a non-conforming use, and I believe it was 2013 was by special permit. Added the convenience store feature to it for a less non-conforming use. As a result, there's a very detailed site plan in there that's no longer being met. We have replaced probably 90% of the site with some form of impervious surface or rock, and causing drainage to flow to the abutting property to the rear. So that was how it was brought to our attention. The town engineer and I went out and confirmed, and as a result, issued violation notice. This was in August of 2020. As with everybody, folks had extra time to remediate due to various circumstances, and the property owner was responsive. Quite a trail of response. We also noticed he added some U-Haul vehicles, so there's vehicle storage on site, which is inadequate parking. So what we have is an expansion of the non-conforming use with the expansion of the parking lot and adding the outdoor storage for vehicles for the rental of vehicles. And rather than restoring as per the special permit granted in 2013, the property owner has elected to proceed with this use variance to allow that. So we've expressed that being the right to do so, that we were not, as an office, in support of that. So therefore, that's one. Just to note a couple others, but that being the most egregious one, as it is a use variance. We also have a identical application, an after-the-fact residential variance request that was denied in April unanimously from the Zoning Board of Appeals. The exact same application is coming again in October. Nothing's changed. So, you know, whether you choose to weigh in on that, again, it's a result of erecting something against the bulk standards and without any certificates of occupancy for the current property owner and without any proper building permits or licensed individuals. So that's 1451 Durham Road. So this is the context of enforcement of late. Lots happened for the past year and a half, health-wise and whatnot, and so we have quite a bit of after-the-fact begging forgiveness going on. So if you choose to weigh in again, Kevin can speak to any of these quite detailed. But
Thank you. Commission members with any comments on any of these? Mr. Fitzsimmons.
Mr. Chairman, I would respectfully request that the commission be opposed to numbers 2 and 5 on the upcoming ZBA agenda based upon input we received from the zoning enforcement officer. But if I could, through you, Mr. Chairman, it says 2 requests are attempt to remediate use in areas zoning violations after the fact. Is that numbers 2 and 5, or is there a different one?
there's actually a sort of another two more that are area restrictions. A little more minor in nature, but again, you know, sort of the nature of the climate we're in. Fixing an after-the-fact no building permit. And that would be numbers 3 and 4 on the legal notice. Again, it's a minor setback adjustment in arrears and a special exception for a garage area that was never sought. But the ones I'm mentioning, the 2 you mentioned, Mr. Fitzsimmons, are definitely the ones that, again, sort of are the more flagrant ones.
If I could, through you, Mr. Chairman, just a clarification on your points regarding number 5. So the 1451 Durham Road, they applied in April of this year, were heard and denied, and now they are coming back next week with no significant change.
That is correct, and both numbers 2 and 5 have had cease and desist orders delivered to them, so they've had escalated enforcement already. No change at all to the application.
I would ask this question, you and I have discussed this, not in this room. Has there been any fine assessed to this person?
Not that we don't have citation authority.
I thought we...
Signage and outside storage.
All right.
This is a final effort on behalf of the property owners to not end up in court.
One other question, because I know it's late, not really, but a question we've discussed in the past, the fees. So are they getting the regular fee structure since they're a zoning violation, or is there a different fee because they're trying to cure a violation?
We have charged the same fee.
Why?
I would turn that back to the commission to the town planner to answer. Yeah, there's been much discussion in the office about how the variances should not be able to be purchased.
Right.
And especially when it's as a result of a violation. So certainly we've discussed amongst ourselves adjusting the fee schedule.
Yeah. And again, forgive me through you, Mr. I know we've discussed this particular issue where we want people to cure their zoning ills, so to speak. But when someone is flagrant, does something, and all they have to do is pay the same price when they're already in violation, it was not, I thought, what we had determined. So I thought the fee structure included, let's call it a penalty, if you're applying for a variance and you've already done it. And if I'm mistaken, then, you know.
If I may,
Did you
Mr.
think
Chairman,
that?
can I respond to Mr. Fitzsimmons? I believe it is sort of posted as a $100 extra fee, but historical practice and current practice has it's not, so
Okay.
so you are correct.
Mr. Chairman, through you, can we ask the staff to enforce our stated fee structure? It doesn't make, and again, I'm not in the office, and you folks do a great job in the office, but it sends a bad message that they should apply at the same fee structure I should when I'm asking permission, and they're asking for forgiveness and pay the same amount of money. That was the whole point of a penalty, was you're going to pay more if you're, we still want them to correct it. We still want them to do what they're supposed to do, follow the rules, and if they're fortunate enough to get a variance, okay, but they're not coming in clean. They're coming in, frankly, with a record. That was the idea of the penalty.
So I think at this point in time, what Mr. Fitzsimmons is requesting that we just enforce our current fee structure.
Duly noted.
Thank you. Anyone else? I guess if we agreed then, we would issue a report on, as Mr. Fitzsimmons had recommended, on 2 and 5.
For next week.
Is that correct,
Yes,
gentlemen?
2 and 5.
Mrs. Torrey? It's 2 and 5.
You're getting a report from both of you on both of those. Kevin
Yes.
and Kevin will provide that on your behalf
Yes, we
to me
appreciate
in
that.
time for Monday's meeting. Thank you.
You're entirely welcome. And if there's no I believe we've, if there's any further questions on zoning enforcement report, I think we've come to the end of our agenda. So at this point in time, if there's no further business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I move I make a motion to adjourn the Monday, September 13th, 2021 Planning and Zoning Commission.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. We're adjourned. Thank you very much.